I still remember that rainy evening as if it happened yesterday. I was standing in line at a tiny convenience store, clutching a few crumpled dollar bills. Money was tight, as always. Rent was overdue, my car was barely holding together, and I was juggling two jobs just to make ends meet. On a whim, I decided to buy a lottery ticket. I never bought them, I always thought it was a waste. But something inside me whispered, why not? What's one more dollar? So, I handed the clerk the bills, got my groceries, and tucked the ticket into my pocket without thinking twice. That night, exhausted, I collapsed onto my worn-out couch and turned on the TV. The lottery numbers flashed across the screen. Millions. I sat there, staring at that little piece of paper as the weight of what just happened sank in. Me, the struggling woman everyone thought would never amount to anything, had just become a millionaire overnight. But as the adrenaline surged, another feeling crept in, fear. I knew my family. I knew exactly how they would react if they found out. My brother's wife would circle me like a vulture, demanding a share for all the support they supposedly gave me. My parents would guilt-trip me into paying off my siblings' debts, mortgages, even their shopping sprees. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years would suddenly appear, calling me family. I could already hear them. You have so much now, you owe us. You can't just keep it all for yourself. Yourself, I whispered to myself, let's see who you really are. The next morning, I stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. My auburn hair was messy, and there were dark circles under my green eyes. I didn't look like a millionaire. I looked like the same tired woman everyone thought they knew. And that's exactly how I wanted it. I decided my first test would be my brother, Mark. He was always quick to remind me how much he sacrificed for the family, though in reality he rarely lifted a finger unless it benefited him. Still, I wanted to give him a chance. I called him that afternoon. Hey, Mark. I know it's sudden, but could you help me out a little? My car broke down again, and I need a ride to work this week until I figure something out. There was a pause on the other end, followed by a sharp sigh. Again? Seriously, Emma, when are you going to get your life together? I can't keep bailing you out. Gas prices are insane right now. I swallowed my disappointment. He doesn't even know I could buy him 3 new cars right now. I just need a ride for a few days, I said quietly. No, Emma. I've got my own responsibilities. Maybe if you didn't waste money on stupid things, you wouldn't be in this mess. Then he hung up. The silence in my living room felt deafening. It hurt, of course. Deep down, I'd hoped he might show me a shred of kindness. But part of me also smiled bitterly. My experiment was working. My brother had shown his true colors. That night, I opened my laptop and checked my new bank account balance again, just to remind lavender air freshener hit me as soon as I walked in. For a moment, nostalgia softened my heart until I remembered why I was here. We sat in the kitchen. My dad flipped through the newspaper while my mom prepared tea. I cleared my throat. Mom, Dad. I hate to ask, but I'm having some financial trouble. My rent's late, and I might need a little help this month. My mom froze, her back still turned as she stirred the sugar. My dad lowered the paper slowly, peering at me over the rim of his glasses. Emma, he said, voice low and disappointed, you're 30 years old. At what point are you going to learn to take care of yourself? My mother finally turned around, holding the teapot like it weighed 100 pounds. We can't keep rescuing you, she added, shaking her head. Your brother never asks us for anything. Why can't you be more like him? I felt my chest tighten. The irony was unbearable. They didn't know I could pay off their mortgage, buy them a new house, even set them up for life. And yet, all I wanted was to see if they'd offer me a little compassion. I see, I whispered, forcing a smile. I understand. The tea on the table went cold as silence filled the room. When I finally stood to leave, my dad muttered, "Maybe this will teach you a lesson." As I stepped outside, the chill of the evening air bit at my skin. My hands trembled, but not from the cold. From rage. From clarity. Fine, I thought, gripping my car keys. If they want to see how helpless I am, they'll get exactly what they deserve when the truth comes out. But not yet. Not until I tested everyone. After my parents' rejection, I still had a tiny bit of hope left. Friends. Surely, friends were the family we chose, right? I called up 2 of my closest friends from college, Lily and Mark. We hadn't been as close in recent years, but we still texted occasionally, shared birthday messages, and pretended nothing had changed. We met at our usual cafe downtown, the kind of place where the lattes were decorated with little hearts in the foam. I forced a tired smile as I slid into the booth. "Guys," I said softly, "I need to talk to you. Things have been really rough. I lost some work, bills are piling up. I might even lose my apartment. I don't know where else to turn." For a moment, there was silence. Mark sipped his coffee without looking at me. Lily tilted her head, feigning sympathy. "That's awful," she said, dragging out the word. "But honestly, Emma, we all have our own problems. I just got a new car loan. Mark's saving for a house." Mark finally spoke, his tone sharp. "You've always had a thing for drama. Maybe if you stopped making bad decisions, you wouldn't be in this mess." The words hit harder than a slap. My throat tightened, and for a second I thought I might cry. But then, something inside me snapped. I leaned back, staring at them. The 2 people I once laughed with, shared secrets with, trusted with everything, and now, they couldn't even offer a few kind words, let alone help. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I just smiled, a cold, empty smile. "Thanks for the coffee," I said, standing up. "I won't bother you again." As I walked out of the cafe, I felt strangely light. Each rejection, each cruel word, was stripping away the illusions I'd carried for years. Now I knew the truth, I was utterly alone. And that was fine. Because when I revealed my secret, the shock on their faces would be worth every second of this pain. After my so-called friends turned their backs on me, I told myself, "Okay, Emma, you still have your work family." I'd been at the company for almost 8 years. Surely, people I'd helped, supported, and stayed late for would be willing to show a shred of compassion. The next morning, I dragged myself to the office, clutching a half-empty folder of unpaid bills. I asked my manager, Karen, if I could speak with her privately. She adjusted her glasses. "Emma, I'm sorry, but that wouldn't be appropriate. We can't start bending rules. If we did it for you, we'd have to do it for everyone." Her words were rehearsed, professional, completely detached. I nodded, my chest tightening. "I understand. Maybe I can at least get some extra shifts?" She shook her head. "Actually, we're cutting hours. The company's restructuring. You might want to consider other opportunities." I walked out of that office numb, every step heavier than the last. Not only was I denied help, I was being pushed out. As I passed my coworkers, a few of them exchanged whispers. I caught fragments. "She's struggling." Heard she begged Karen. Pathetic. I wanted to scream. To tell them, "You don't know anything. You have no idea what I'm holding back." But instead, I kept quiet. I gathered my things, left the building, and as the cool air hit my face outside, a bitter smile crept across my lips. The lottery ticket was burning a hole in my pocket. The millions I hadn't touched yet. And when the time was right, these people, my family, my friends, my colleagues, would choke on their laughter. That evening, I sat on the edge of my bed in my tiny apartment, staring at the unpaid bills scattered across the blanket. Electricity, rent, medical, The numbers blurred together, and for the first time in years, I felt completely powerless. I thought about how quickly everyone had turned their backs on me. My family called me a burden. My friends made excuses. My coworkers whispered behind my back. People I'd spent my whole life supporting couldn't spare a single ounce of kindness when I needed it most. I was alone. Tears spilled down my cheeks as I pulled out the lottery ticket from my drawer, the one I hadn't told a soul about. The edges were already worn from me holding it every night, whispering to myself, "It's real. You're not imagining it." The truth was, I hadn't cashed it yet. Part of me was scared. Scared of how people would treat me once they knew. Scared that money would change everything. But as I sat there in that dark, freezing room, shivering under a thin blanket, another thought crept in: what if it was time to stop hiding? I picked up my phone and opened the group chat with my family. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. Should I tell them the truth now? Should I watch their faces crumble when they realized they had mocked the very person who could have saved them? For a moment, I almost typed it. Almost pressed send. But then I stopped. No, I whispered to myself, wiping my tears. Not yet. They don't deserve it. Not until the timing is perfect. I put the phone down, slid the ticket back into its hiding place, and crawled under the blanket. That night, for the first time in weeks, I slept with a smile. Because tomorrow, I would start planning my revenge. The next morning, I woke up with a strange calmness. For weeks, I had been spiraling, hurt, humiliated, abandoned. But now, everything felt sharp, clear. If my family and friends wanted to treat me like nothing, I'd let them. In fact, I'd make sure they dug their own graves of regret. I started small. At work, when a colleague who had once laughed about my pathetic begging asked if I could help him finish a big project, I smiled politely. "I wish I could," I said softly, "but I really need to focus on surviving right now. I don't have much energy to spare." His jaw tightened, but he didn't push. Later that week, my cousin posted in the family chat that their car had broken down. They were desperate for money to repair it and begged everyone to chip in. Normally, I would have been the first to volunteer, the helpful one. Instead, I typed, "I'm sorry, things are really tough for me right now. I don't even have enough for heating." No one replied. And yet, I could almost imagine their faces if they knew the truth, that I could buy them 10 cars. They hated me when I asked for help. Cold words. Cruel laughter. Silence. As I stared at the list, my chest no longer hurt. Instead, a smile tugged at the corners of my lips. They thought I was weak. They thought I was powerless. But soon, they'd learn who really held the cards. A few days later, my aunt called me out of the blue. Her tone was syrupy sweet, the kind of voice she only used when she wanted something. "Sweetheart," she cooed, "you know your uncle's business is struggling. Just a little loan would help us get through the month. We'll pay you back soon, I promise." I almost laughed out loud. The irony nearly made me choke. If she knew that I could clear their debts in one swipe of a pen, she'd probably fall to her knees. But I wanted her, and all of them, to feel what I felt when they turned me away. Later that evening, I overheard my cousins mocking me in the family group chat. "Of course she can't help, she's always been useless," one wrote. "Bet she spends all her money on junk food and bad choices," another chimed in. My hands tightened around the phone, but instead of crying, I smiled. Because little did they know, the world was about to turn upside down for them. The next morning, I called a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, the kind who specializes in quiet property purchases and ironclad contracts. If my family wanted to treat me like dirt, I'd buy the very ground they stood on. And the best part? They wouldn't know until it was too late. Weeks passed, and my lawyer worked quietly, like a shadow. One by one, I signed papers that placed businesses, plots of land, and even houses in my name. The shocking part? most of it was easier than I expected. My uncle had racked up debts, my aunt had defaulted on a loan, and my cousins were careless with money. All it took was patience and cash. And I had both. One evening, I drove past my uncle's house. Lights were on, voices were raised. The bank had delivered foreclosure warnings. My aunt was screaming, my cousins were pacing in panic. I parked a little way down the street and just watched. They had no idea that the person who now owned their house was me. Later that week, I walked into a family dinner. For the first time in months, they'd invited me, probably because they thought they could guilt me into handing over money. Finally decided to show your face, my cousin sneered as I sat down. I smiled. Oh, I've been busy. You'll find out soon enough. They laughed, rolling their eyes, dismissing me as usual. But as I watched them bicker and boast around the table, I couldn't help but feel a strange calm. Because tomorrow, when the eviction notice arrived, their entire world would collapse. And when they ran, desperate for answers, I would be standing right there, ready to reveal the truth. The day finally came. I invited my family over, just casually, for what they thought was a normal gathering. The house smelled like roasted chicken, and the table was set perfectly, just like any Sunday dinner. As they arrived, they greeted me with the same smug smiles they always wore, assuming I was still struggling, still weak, still the same useless Emma they had mocked for years. I waited until dessert, when everyone was distracted, chatting about bills, work, and trivial complaints. Then I stood, holding a single envelope. Family, I began, voice calm but commanding, I have something to tell you. Heads turned. What is it? My aunt asked, trying to mask her impatience. I smiled. This house. The plots your uncle has been struggling with? The properties your cousin thought were safe investments? They're all mine. I've been in control the entire time. Tears, disbelief, panic, it was all there on their faces. I let them stew in the realization for a moment, watching the family I once loved crumble under the weight of their own arrogance. Then I added, almost kindly, anyone who genuinely cared for me, stood by me when I needed it most, will still have a place in my life. But those who doubted, ignored, or mocked me, I hope you've learned your lesson. I handed each of them the legal documents, proof of ownership, contracts, everything. Silence followed. Heavy, suffocating, complete silence. For the first time, I felt free. The lottery had changed my life, yes. But the real victory? The realization that I could finally walk among my family and friends without fear, without manipulation, and with the power to protect myself, and only those who truly mattered. And as I sat back, sipping my wine, I smiled. Not with malice. Not with anger. But with a quiet, unshakable satisfaction. Because I had finally won.